Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Could I please have you take seats and feel free to turn your chairs. You do it right now so they don't rustle. Just turn your chairs to face this way. There's coffee and donuts in the back of the room, so please help yourselves at any time. And I know there's going to be a little bit of laughter, and that's what we want, but if we can keep the conversation down in between so that we can hear our speakers, that would be wonderful. Okay, I want to start out by thanking Kurt and Anita Franzen for the use of this beautiful, spacious facility. Been so gracious, and their hospitality towards us and the community is wonderful, and we thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you. Okay, and then next I'm going to introduce the members of the Lawler Historical Society. There are 6 of us who are members. And I'll start out just because 3 of them are over there. We have Verna Orvis. She was a Sabelka, Verna Sabelka Orvis. Mary Burns. Kurt Hemsoth. Bonnie Keener. Kyle Keener. And I'm Nancy Reichs-Cuvalier, and we're all from Lawler. Bonnie was born in St. Lucas, but is now a Lawler person. So we also want to thank so many of you for your contributions to the Lawler Historical Society. We simply could not do this without the contributions of our community. So many of you have donated artifacts and articles from long ago. Several of you came and helped us set up the other day, and honestly, we couldn't do it without all of your help.
Thank you.
We want to continue to preserve and collect Lawler artifacts, so if you have things and someday you know that there's no one to pass it on to, or someone who's not going to appreciate it, we'll appreciate it. So please consider giving it to us. One of our mottos is we want to capture the time, treasure, and talents of our community, and this is exactly how we do it. Okay, now I'll introduce our panel. First of all, we have, I'm going to start over here, Donnie Winters. Donnie was born in 1944. His parents were George and Loretta Winter. He attended Lawler Catholic School through 8th grade, and then 2 years at Lawler High, then over to Turkey Valley for 2 years, graduating in the class of 1962. He married Sharon Kremer, and the 2 of them had 2 children, Julie and Ryan Winter, and he still farms on their home farm north of Lawler. Then we have, I'll go Shirley Murray. Shirley was born in 1935. Her parents were May and Frank Griffin from here in Lawler. She attended grade school also at Mount Carmel Catholic School, and she graduated from Lawler High School in 1953. She married Joe Murray from Lawler in 1956, and together they had 3 children, Julie, David, and Tim. Right here. She went to Mercy School of Nursing and then was an RN for several years. She was the Turkey Valley School nurse for many years and is now retired and living in New Hampton. Next we have Bill Sheridan. Bill was born in 1944, a native of Lawler as well. His parents were Ed and Virginia Sheridan. He also attended grade school at Lawler Catholic School and went on to Lawler High School for 2 years and then to Turkey Valley for his remaining 2 years, graduating in 1962 with Donnie Winter. He has 3 children, Edward, Tom, and Greg. He initially was a teacher teaching in Johnston for 10 years and then went on into life insurance businesses. And the last 5 years or so has been doing some consulting for writing and helping people write memories and stories and all kinds of things. So that's Bill Shirley. And then we have Don Blazik Sr. Don was born in 1935 and his parents were Jim and Margaret Blazik. He grew up and farmed on his home farm north of Lawler. He also attended Mount Carmel Catholic School for 8 years and then went on and graduated from Lawler High School in 1953 with Shirley Murray. Don married Shirley Carnatz. They have 4 children, Don, Jean, Laura, and Tom. He had a stint in the military, and then he eventually started selling sand and gravel to Kroll Ready Mix. He eventually bought out Hank Fensel's excavating equipment and went on to start Blazik Corporation. So he is a retired farmer now living north of Lawler, and that is our panel. Mary Virginia Simon Ball was going to join us this morning too, but we got a call from her daughter. She is under the weather today and couldn't join us, so unfortunately she won't be here. But when I talked to her on the phone, the stories just started rolling out of her mouth, 2 weeks ago when we asked her, and unfortunately she's not here. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the panel. They're just going to kind of tell stories about their youth and growing up, and we're just going to pass the microphone back and forth from person to person and let them just add little bits and pieces to stories they have and tell new stories. And like I told each of them when we asked them to be a part of this, every time we lose a member of our community, we lose part of Lawler's history. And these guys have so much information and they know so much about our past, and that's why we wanted to share it with all of you. Okay? All right, here we go. I'm going to start by handing the mic to Bill Sheridan. You guys can stay sitting if it's easier, or you can stand, and we'll just go from there.
I'll start by standing. I think there's been a law someplace that they always put the prettiest woman and the most handsome guy on the left side of the table. And the difference, Donnie and I were in the same class. The difference between Donnie and me, some of it I tell you will be the truth. A few years ago, I wrote a little book about 10 years ago called Depot Street Memories, the Lawler Stories. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I will say there are no printed copies left, but if you have any interest and if you read some of your stories online, you can get it for Amazon for the price of a cup of coffee. I think it's about $3. Okay. She said a little bit closer. Between the hearing aid and the cochlear implant, I never know if I'm talking too loud or not loud enough. So here's the deal. If you want me to go louder, go like this. Not so loud, go like this. And shut up, just go like this. I asked if I could go first because I am so looking forward to the stories of these other 3 folks. And I want to begin by almost begging you to sometime write your story, because I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if this applies to you. When I wrote this book about 10, 11 years ago, I gave dozens of talks, many of them around Northeast Iowa, also many of them around Johnston, the Des Moines area where I live. And I started every program the same way. How many of you wish you knew more about Mom and Dad and Grandpa and Grandma and Uncle Henry and Aunt Halsey? Raise your hand if you'd like to know more about. Okay, that's my point. Somebody cares. And you don't have to write a book. Take a yellow pad, do it on a computer, I don't care how you do it. Memories, because somebody cares. And at some point, we're all going to get older. I'm going to be 80 in January. I do accept birthday gifts, so I'll let you know how to get a hold of me. we're going to become forgetful, we might get dementia, we're going to die. And when that happens, our stories are gone. So please, 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 I implore you to write them down. And I'm going to give you some hints. 60 Minutes was the longest running show on TV, and it was for about like 40 years or something like that. And the guy, his thing was tell them a story. So when you write your memories, do it in story form. Just tell them who was there, what the conversation was. And there are 3 things I recommend. Think of people, think of places, think of events. And I'm going to give you some examples from my book on people. I wrote about Billy Costigan, my next door neighbor. And I call him the best neighborhood weatherman in the state, because if he said it was going to rain, it was going to rain. But also, I was grandma sitting one time with Grandma McAloon, and Mama's in New Hampton, visiting Aunt Nora, and there was pre-cell phone, no way to get a hold of her, and it was pretty obvious that Grandma was going to die. I go over to Bill, I was scared to death. He comes over, and he also could see that she was about to die, and he said, "You go play with the kids, I'll be with Grandma." Well, when Mom got home from New Hampton, the neighborhood weatherman was there with her still living mom, and she lived another 3 or 4 weeks. But what a great guy. I wrote about Norman McMullen. We call him Stormin' Norman. One time he jumped off the Crane Creek, the bridge over there, and he jumped down and he said, "Tarzan, king of the," and he was going to say jungle, but he came back up and said, "Bloodsuckers." I wrote about my dad. Who died when I was 7. And I had stories that nobody else would know if I didn't tell them. And that's the type of thing I want my children and grandchildren to know about. I wrote about my cousin Yeggs Lansing. Some of you remember Yeggs. He weighed 100 pounds with rocks in his pocket. We were second or third cousins. I wrote about Herb Cutsworth and the town cop car, which was really a pickup. I wrote about Cootie Keefe, the mail delivery guy. I wrote about my Aunt Stella, who was the original 911. You could call in and say, call Tim and say, she said, "Don't bother, they're not home today." I wrote about Shirley Murray. His nickname was Koenig. And one night we were in Martin's Cafe, and a bunch of us were kids, high school kids. He and Greg Timmon got into this friendly debate about something, and the losers, they said, would go next door. Mike Leonard had the keys to his dad's barbershop and said, "We're going to cut all our hair off." Well, unfortunately for Koenig, he lost the bet. We all went next door. Mike Leonard took one of his dad's scissors and went right down the middle he looked like a reverse mohawk. Well, Greg was smart. He ran. He didn't get his hair cut. And so we had a lot of fun with that. I wrote about my favorite teacher, Josine McGreevy, Mrs. Mack. Some of you had her as teacher. She was absolutely my idol. And she's the one that confirmed in me that I had some writing skills and some speaking skills. So I'm forever grateful for her. Don Bemis, Junkman Don, going up and down Main Street with his one horse, carrying junk out to the garbage pit south of town. So that's people. And every person sitting here, you all have some person that you could write about, and a lot of people you could write about. The other is places. I wrote about my Carmel Catholic School, about Junco Park, about the city park, which is now Kroll Park, about Martin's Cafe, that had the first black and white television that we all congregated to watch Wednesday night, boxing, so forth. Things these young people have no idea what we're talking about there. The two-sided fountain, one side for people, one side for horses. Hamburger Haven in New Hampton, where every time Ding Leach would make a hamburger, he'd say, "That's the last of the gray one," trying to indicate that it might be horse meat. And I wrote about the depot. So that's places. And finally, you can write about events, things that happen to you. In this very building, John Deere Day, some of the old people might remember that. They let us out of school and show movies about Ma and Pa kettle, and we got treats, and it was really a big deal. Most people don't have a clue what John Deere Day is. Breaking the church bells. Bill Cutforth would let us ring the angelus at noon. George Tillman and I were doing it one day, and I rang the 9 small bell, and he rang the big bell. And when he was halfway through his, I thought, I wonder what would happen if we pulled them together. The answer is silence. We did not have a church bell for 2 weeks. My nickname for the rest of the summer was Dinger. And I hid under the bed, afraid the cops were going to get me. Another one was Christmas caroling. We went Christmas caroling. At the time, the Lawler was probably 80% Catholic, and so it was just understood. We would sing, and then they would give the buck or two to us, and then we gave to the church. Well, what we stopped at turned out to be the Stone family. We're not Catholic, and he said, "Now I don't want this between you and me. Just you guys take the money." So I looked at George. George looked at me, and we decided not to tell the other 10 carolers. So about 2 weeks later, we went into the Martin's Cafe with our $2. Each got a malt. Well, then I just happened to be serving Mass the next Sunday, and Father said, "Thanks for the carolers for the $23. George looked at me from the pew and went like this, like 5 times, like it should have been $25, not 23. Another time, this is a Joe Scally story. We lived right across the street from them, and I put on white shirt, white pants, white shoes, white socks, white bell, thinking I looked pretty darn cute. I was going to go into Martin's Cafe and impress the girls. I walked out and Scally said, "Sheridan, that looks really good. You got a job at the creamery?" Obviously, I went back in and changed my attire. I wrote about wash and dry day at the Sheridan House, where we used to hang up clothes and rinse stuff you'd never do today. And finally, I wrote about not a person, but about my dog, called a Blackie Sheridan, Lawler's dog. Everybody knew Blackie. Some of my buddies didn't have animals, and some did. And my mom said, "It's not Blackie Sheridan, it's a dog. Just call him Blackie." So now I'm going to let those other people tell you some real stuff, but I just want to play to you one last time. Please write your story or somebody. Sure.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Shirley Murray. I was a Griffin before I was married. My parents were May Mitchell and Frank Griffin. I had an older brother, Gene, and my dad was killed in 1945 in a car accident. So we were very poor. He was a mail carrier from the time he was 16, my dad, in the horse and buggy. And I remember him in that horse and buggy going out in the country, and way up by Jericho would be the Lawler routes. And once in a while, after we got our first car, it was a funny looking little black thing, and I could go with him. And we got stuck, and he'd have to get out and do all of that and get the snow gone. I went to Mount Carmel School for 8 years. Along came a new sister. It was her first assignment. Her name was Sister Damien. And so my mother thought, I've got to take piano lessons. Well, Sister Damien finally decided, that wasn't the thing for me. It wasn't mine. And so God bless her. She told my mom she didn't think that I was going to be a piano player the rest of my life. I still go and see her once a year. She is 102 years old. She has her beautiful freckles still on her cheeks. And I actually cry every time I hug her because she was so beautiful and just a lovely lady. And so 102, she just celebrated her birthday. Many of us know that. I guess the next thing, when we were in Catholic school, the sisters would have their prayers in the evening after their dinner. Then they would come out and slide with us, and we would slide from the school all the way down to Main Street in Lawler, all the way down, and the sisters' veils would be flying. And you know what, I think probably that is how we loved the sisters, so they were part of our lives. And then naturally, Lawler High School for 4 years, went to nurses training in Mason City and Sioux City, Mercy. I was there 3 years. Got married, of course you had to by that time. I was already 21 and got married. And so anyway, I married Joe Murray and we always lived in Lawler. I worked at New Hampton Hospital and then Turkey Valley School for 30 years, and we had 3 children. I've got 2 boys sitting right here, Dave and Tim. My daughter lives in Texas, so I wish they were close. I just always thought, I would tell them, you cannot live in Lawler, there is nothing for you. We don't own a farm, we don't have a business. Well, but who thought my children are going to live in Texas, Virginia, and Minnesota? But that's part of life. Maybe makes you love them more that they are not there. My brother had a paper route, the Des Moines Register, when he was a young boy, and then of course I had to take that over when he retired because he could work out at Blasing's. Jim Blasik used to hire him a little bit. However, I got my first math lesson. I will not ever in my life forget it. There was quite a wealthy man that lived here in town and owned a business, a hardware store, and he took the Des Moines Register and it was 12 cents a week. Okay, so you went every Saturday and collected your 12 cents. He gave me a quarter and I only gave him 12 cents back. And my first lesson in math came right then and there on his porch, and the tears were rolling. Oh, I really learned my first math lesson from him. God bless him today. However, and then I'd collect from all the people in town. You could go in their porches and the 12 cents would be sitting there, and run to the bank and get, before it closed at noon, and get the bank draft to send to Des Moines. Then I would babysit for a lady, and I love the Spells girls yet to this day, and boys. I would do dishes Saturday noon, 12 o'clock, take care of 2 children, scrub all the floors and the steps down the old liquor store. Marie would be home. Marie Spells, God love her, one of my best friends. She would be home as the church bell was ringing, 6 o'clock, and I made 50 cents for babysitting, cleaning, doing dishes. And I thought, Saturday night, you go downtown, everybody would go downtown. Martin's had popcorn. My parents would be buying groceries in O'Connor's store, and maybe there would be something cheaper up the street at Casey and Griffin. Maybe Benny Nelty on the corner had another sale. So they would go to all the stores, and our little Model T would be full of groceries on the way home. So I had a good life a good life in Lawler. Lawler is still my home. I live in New Hampton right now, but Lawler is still home. I've got to look at some of my notes here. I'm still looking at Sister Damien's note. Jen knows her, Jen Costigan knows her so well. And my children, like I said, one in Texas, one in Virginia, and one in Minnesota. So I do miss them. I wish they were closer. But New Hampton had a little more than Lawler that I could do business with. And so I live in New Hampton, but Lawler is still my home. And Lawler High School was still the best. Don Blasek, Claire Lansing, a lot of Donna Leonard, Joanne Martin. We were all such good friends. Had a lot of good times. Anyway, I just want to thank these guys for doing this. Someday when I die, I want them to have some of my grandmother's dishes that I just cherish, and my kids wouldn't cherish them like I cherish them. I won't even use them because they're so beautiful. Anyway, I hope those dishes can come to the Historical Society. And I just can't thank these guys that do this. Every year they work so hard. I think our applause needs to go to this Historical Society. Thank you so very much. Love seeing such a lovely crowd here and old friends that I haven't seen in a long time. So, okay, Don Blasek, my classmate, is going to take over now. He has lots of good stories.
Thank you, Shirley. What I wrote down is an awful lot different from what these guys are talking about. I was born north of Lawler Hospital and that, but I was called a spoiled brat. Being 35, but we had running water, we had electricity, we had everything. We got most of the valuable stuff. We had a refrigerator, a washing machine, and a deep freeze. We had it all before the war. So life was good during the war. Not good, it was difficult. I went back to my mother's and father's, not stories, but what they alluded to that happened in their lifetime. My mother was born in 1903, and she talked about, she was born where Donnie Winters is born, up in the Turkey River, right north of Lawler and Blackdown. And she talked about running to the road, about 100 yards from the house to the road in front. If there was a car going by, this is 1908, probably 9. Very few cars, no mufflers, but if they heard a car, they ran to the road to see the car. That's an interesting thing. She talked about also walking to school. The schoolhouse is about 3/4 of a mile north of the Turkey River, and they had walked to school every day. Her sister, Mrs. McGowan, Mamie McGowan, and Pat Winters, her dad, his dad. And they were going up there, and there was an old sod house on the west side of the blacktop along the Turkey River. And they had a sod roof, and of course there was a couple boys in the neighborhood. They were all walking together, and the boys were going to go over and get up on the roof, and this guy come out of the house, because when they went on the roof, the dirt would fall out of the sod and fall down in his milk and his food. And this guy came out of the house just like a hot hornet. He was, me catch him, me kill him, me eat him. That took care of that. He solved the problem right there. Let's see, I'm a poor reader. Can't even remember to read my own notes. My dad was born in 01, and he talked about going up and down the river. There were 7 boys in the family. Of course, 7 boys, they could really cover a lot of ground. Catching snapping turtles and putting them in barrels, and they sent them to Chicago for money. Something was really going big at that time. One of the other stories we talked about a lot was when the war was on. The women would go to the grocery store and everything was rationed, and you know, they went in there, and one woman said to the other one while they were talking over buying things, and she says, "I hope."